Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the Peanut Labs Ask the Expert Anything broadcast. My name is Annie Pettit, and I'll be your host and moderator for the next 25 minutes. This webinar is the second in our monthly series where we talk to a thought-leading market researcher about anything that interests you. Are you curious about their take on probability samples, use of social media and market research? Curious if they talk to people in person or on the phone? Any question is fair game in the next half hour. So that's what we're looking for in today's AMA, and Ask Me Anything. You are in charge. You get to ask the questions. So if you do have questions, you should see a question box in the lower right-hand side of your screen. Just type your questions in there, and I'll go through as many of them as I can in the next half hour. In the upcoming few months, we've already got a few more folks lined up. Katie Clark will join us in March. She's, as you can see in the picture, she's a Google Glass user. We've got Tamara Barber coming up in April, Jim Bryson coming up in May. These are all available to register for on the Peanut Labs website, so feel free to go there and register for any of those that interest you. That is also where you will find the recording for today's webinar as soon as we can get that downloaded, likely by tomorrow. So today, as I mentioned, we are talking with Tom Ewing. Here is a lovely photograph of Tom. I'm pretty sure this is how he shows up at work every day.
It is a work photo.
That's great. You may know Tom from his work at Brain Juicer. He's the author of the Blackbeard blog. He's won or been nominated for innumerable papers, presentations, so on. So I am absolutely thrilled that Tom is joining us today. So, Tom, thanks so much for coming here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to anyone who's tuned in or who's listening on the recording.
So to start things off, I want you to take a couple minutes to tell everyone who you are and what you're passionate about, whether it's research or not research.
I have been in the research industry for 15 years. I kind of stumbled into it. I had been working in a second-hand bookshop, and that wasn't paying the bills, and Research International were hiring, so I sort of wandered in on the recommendation of a friend and joined their graduate program. And since then I've bounced around between research and marketing, usually marketing for research, confusingly, so the lines are very blurred. And I'm now at Brain Juicer, where I am their content director. I got a promotion and a title change last month, and content director is it's an important job. It was described, Chief Content Officer was described as the sexiest job of 2014 in an article I read and pointedly forwarded to my boss. But it basically means arsing around on the internet. And kind of writing stuff, blogs, white papers, conference presentations, reading stuff, being a kind of funnel into the company for interesting things, Twitter, that sort of thing, and obviously working out the performance of these things and the metrics and what have you, and kind of helping.
I really like that you said you just kind of stumbled into market research. I think a lot of us did that. Did you happen to take any classes along the way in university or college that were even remotely related? How did you really end up in research?
No, my university degree is ancient and modern history.
Perfectly
there wasn't a lot of research in that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's ancient history is useful in that what you're doing with ancient history is you're trying to reconstruct what happened from an incredibly small amount of data. The only difference is, of course, that you've got no idea whether it's representative or not. You know, like a couple of pots with a picture of a goat on. that might have been the only goat in the whole of Greece, and that's why they decided to make a pot out of it. So you've got to go to all sorts of other evidence for whether to sort the sheep from the goats, as it were. And so it's kind of faintly similar, but it's a real stretch to really connect it. But yeah, I mean, our generation of researchers, an awful lot of them stumbled in, which is good. It gives you, people have a kind of there's a sort of melting pot skill set in research, which is really nice. People are, there's people from a very diverse range of backgrounds, and if anything, I think that the kind of professionalization of market research that we're seeing a little bit now with university courses and stuff, I worry a tiny bit that we're going to have a lot of this. It's going to be more sort of just a little bit more homogenous.
Oh, everybody knows the exact same thing, and no
are.
one's, we've just got one perspective on everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like when you're interpreting stuff, what you bring from outside. I know that you're meant to not bring stuff from outside, and it's meant to be just about the data and all this, but the way the human brain works is that you bring other stuff from outside. And if everyone's kind of been on the same courses and learned the same things and coming from the same background, there won't be these sort of interesting hinterlands of experience that you can tap and kind of think, well, that reminds me of that, and sort of, how did this other completely unrelated thing play out? Maybe that's something that you can hypothesize with research.
Did you find you needed to brush up with any particular classes when you did get into the market research space?
Well, I worked at Research International, which was known in England at least as the University of Market Research, and was widely considered to have the best graduate training program, with the result that it would recruit brilliant graduates every year. And then, of course, they complete the best graduate training program in research and promptly leave for higher paid jobs elsewhere in the research industry. So, but I had a kind of basic grounding in, I mean, I had A-level maths, so which is like the exam you take at 18 in the UK, and I took the statistics module of that. So I kind of had this sort of very basic statistics thing, and I was kind of trained in then, here is the basics of how you do research, and I had to go out with a clipboard and actually kind of do some research, which of course immediately, if there is one thing, we're always complaining about long surveys, and actually the absolute best way to get people to not write long surveys is to make them work in a telephone centre or do face-to-face.
What's the longest survey you ever did?
Oh, I had to do, in my first week, I had to do a 45-minute one for Mars, and which was no fault of Mars's, I think. I mean, all surveys were that long at the time. And the first door I knocked on was this old woman who had been widowed the month before, and kind of broke down crying in the middle of my interview with her, which was an awful experience because it kind of apparently she and her husband had really liked Snickers.
Oh no!
So I was kind of reading down these sort of list of brand attributes very dutifully, thinking I can't ask these questions, and then so anyway, that was my introduction to research, and I've never looked back.
That's actually a great introduction to research. It really brings all the emotions and all the difficult parts that we have to experience every day right into the meat of the matter. What are some of your favorite market research blogs? Obviously, other than your own, which is one of my top 2 absolute favorites. If you are not already reading the Blackbeard blog, you really need to. Which other ones do you recommend, Tom?
I recommend Love Stats.
Okay, beyond that.
By Annie Pettit.
Beyond
I like Green Book is good. I mean, the great thing about Green Book is he posts so much content that even though there's kind of you will occasionally read something on there that you just think, oh, for heaven's sake, but then the next day there'll be kind of 2 other things which are pretty sensible, and it's a really kind of vibrant kind of fast-moving thing. So that's a good one. In terms of blogs, it tends to be sort of posts that I that I'll go to and look at. And I'm probably more the kind of person who will end up reading like planning stuff, probably more than the pure research ones.
Sure.
The Hote Pop on Twitter, Oat Pop maybe, who is Jay Owens of Face. She has a blog which she updates very infrequently, but it's always good. She's coming at kind of social media from a sociology perspective, so that's well worth reading. Ray, of course, his blog is good. I think, like, I mean, when I do Blackbeard, the idea of Blackbeard is to be the market research blog that people who don't like market research or who don't know that they like market research can read and can kind of, yeah, I'm getting something out of this. I understand the stuff. So the sort of discussion of methodology is not really high on the agenda, especially as the industry is full of people who know loads more than me about it.
Sure. How do you choose the topics for your blog?
Well, actually, sorry. Oh no, I'm going to get murdered now by my employers. The other market research blog you must read, because I also write it, is the Brian Juicer blog, which is not actually written by a cartoon with a bow tie, but is written by me, and that's Brain Juicer's own blog, and that one I kind of actually sit down and think, okay, what do we need to feature? Which of our tools haven't we got something? Like there's this sort of tug of war between the idea that, okay, like let's have every post have a call to action,
right,
which the action is kind of buy some research from us, so it's always the same call to action, and sort of, well, let's make this post really interesting, and hopefully the two kind of balance out and flow into one another. But that's the one where I actually sit down and think, yeah, okay, let's have a series of posts on the Super Bowl, or let's have a series of posts on emotions, or let's do a, like, you know, Valentine's Day fake market research romance, or the research Christmas Carol, or one of those kind of things.
So aside from the sales pitch part of things, you still need a topic. Where is that topic coming from?
Yeah, it's mostly coming from stuff that I read and think, okay, usually it's I read something and I think, okay, that's interesting, but I don't think they're right. So like, what would I write about that topic? Or, you know, like something like, oh, teens are deserting Facebook, and I read those kind of things and I think, well, A, are they, and B, does it matter, and why does it matter, and why do we worry about this kind of thing? And then so it's sort of, right, let's just try and come, there's baby guinea pig, let's just try and come at topics from a slightly more, you know, an angle that I haven't seen covered. So that's the idea of any of those things. But the topics just come from, like, okay, what's being talked about on Twitter, divided by what do we want to, as a firm, promote. Okay. And the stuff on Blackbeard is like, what are stuff that I'm interested in but isn't linked to anything Brain Juice is doing.
Weird and wacky stuff.
Yeah.
Do you ever worry about privacy in the online world?
Not really. I think I don't worry about privacy, and one of the reasons I don't worry about privacy is that I am a 40-year-old white guy in a settled job with a kind of, you know, steady career, and like, assuming that there aren't any enormous skeletons in my online closet, I don't have anything particularly to be worried about. I'm not starting out. I'm not in the, you know, I'm in like the most privileged socio-demographic group of all time. The chances of anyone wanting to use online stuff against me are actually fairly low. But I worry about privacy from the perspective of people who are, like, you know, younger or more vulnerable, or who are in kind of things where they've kind of like grown up on Facebook and there's loads of like doofy stuff hanging around. I mean, I think the only reason people like me on something like Tumblr, which is full of young people, is because they didn't know me when I was 20, and when I held all the idiotic opinions that a 20-year-old guy holds.
Well, okay, so your opinions are of an idiotic 40-year-old now.
Yeah, now they are, but like, I can kind of, I think that the thing that you learn is that you learn to shut up. Strange though this may seem, coming from you waffling on and ask me anything, you learn to be quiet.
So this lovely little hamster we see on screen here, this was a publicly available picture on your Facebook page. Fortunately, it doesn't reveal deep, dark secrets.
No, it reveals. Well, I mean, I could be kind of breeding them to fight each other or something. So,
Fighting hamsters.
but yeah, the it no, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, I'm happy. Like the stuff I put up, I read an interesting thing actually from I mentioned her a little while ago, Jay Owens, who works for Fates, who linked to something called unprofessionalism, a piece on unprofessionalism, and about how basically you ultimately have to bite the bullet and be a bit unprofessional these days, because that is on the one hand it's like there's this code of professionalism which is basically about not being particularly human, or being a kind of like particular version of a human, and then there's who you actually are, which is a kind of human person. And this article, the actual example of unprofessionalism they gave was this person. This isn't Jay Owens of Face. This is the person that she's linked to. The example given was like someone who'd made a music app, but it would stop anytime someone tried to play Nickelback. It wouldn't play them. And sorry, I know you're Canadian, and there's
no offense taken.
Well, but like, and this struck me as like, okay, this is actually the kind of laziest example of unprofessionalism. Here is an opinion that like nobody thinks you were brave for having. But I guess it is quite cool that you then kind of code it into your app, and it does make it a bit more human and such-like. So, yeah.
Sure. So here's a highly relevant question. What is the most underrated Lou Reed solo album?
Metal Machine Music, obviously.
Obviously.
No, I mean, I assume it's underrated. It probably is quite rated now because it's like it's so notorious that everyone answers it, and it had a starring role in my first market research paper. I'm not actually a huge Reed fan. Sorry to speak ill of the dead. Well, not speak ill of him. I mean, I think he was perfectly good. But I don't really listen to him very much. So the only ones that I have ever really kind of spent much time with are Metal Machine Music, which I listen to a lot in my kind of, yes, I'm going to listen to Metal Machine Music because, it's so extreme, man, phase, and Berlin, because it's got some quite pretty tunes, even if it is about being a heroin addict and murdering your partner.
Oh, it sounds great.
So yeah, I don't think either of those are underrated particularly. Yeah.
So our question asker has said that is a good answer, so you should be happy.
Excellent. Well, great.
Do you know Thomas Ewing, the musician?
I know a guy. Well, no, I don't know. I've never actually met anyone who's called Thomas Ewing. There are several musicians called Thomas Ewing. There was at one point a band called the Tom Ewings. Astonishingly, that was like when I was really new to the internet, and I just thought, this is so weird. Yeah, how how can there be more than one Tom Ewing on the internet? This is crazy, man. And this is back in like '97 or something. And of course now that seems very naive. All the Tom Ewings have very exciting jobs, except for me. And like one of them is like a historian of stage magic, which is brilliant. I would swap lives with him. Another of them always speaking at a conference about patent fraud. Actually, he doesn't have a very exciting job. But then there's this other guy who is a musician who releases albums, and he is an evangelical pastor called Tom Ewing. And so every now and then there will be like, when I do a vanity search on Twitter, there will be a tweet saying, thank you, Tom Ewing, you've healed me and I feel truly blessed. And I always want to retweet these into my timeline. And sort of pass on these affirming messages. Maybe it would be wonders for my personal brand.
I think I'll do it for you. So we have another question. How do you feel about getting paid to share your private life for big data purposes?
I bring it on. No, I don't know. I mean, I don't think my private life is remotely interesting enough for big data to be interested in. I look at Facebook and I always just think, well, the ads at the side. If that's any indication of what Facebook thinks of me, then they must think I'm the most terrible scrub. Of it's all kind of, check out these MILFs. Kind of like, sort of, go on the Iron Man course. It's like, I just assume that they know I'm a guy, and it's kind of, right, okay, we don't know that much else about him. He's not really filled in his likes page. Let's just set the adverts to default guy.
What about
The
loyalty cards, which are essentially all your POS data? You're kind of, if you use those, you're kind of selling your information for
yeah,
coupons.
I used to. Oh, weird echo. I used to avoid them, and think, oh yeah, I don't want the man to have my data and to know what. And then I kind of after a few years, I just thought, well, why don't I want the man to have my data? Like, it doesn't actually make an enormous amount. I can see that there are people who maybe wouldn't want to for certain things to be known. Like, but the stuff I buy is so innocuous that at the supermarket, I'm going to plunge right into the center of one of their segments anyway.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, the main issue I have with loyalty cards is that I tend to forget to actually spend any of the points on them, and then I lose them, and so the entire process is completely pointless for me, if not for the supermarket. The Waitrose has just done one which gives you immediate rewards, which I think is quite good from a kind of behavioural point of view. Though I then inevitably lose the card anyway, and then get really angry because I feel I've missed out on some savings at the checkout.
So you have 6 different cards because you've lost them all.
I'm a little more concerned, I think, about the search engines and stuff. I feel because I search for a really wide variety of stuff, and while none of it's terribly incriminating, I'm more likely to. There's a limited amount you can reveal about yourself with a loyalty card.
What about the stores? What about the stores that ask you for your phone number instead of the card?
That hasn't happened. I guess I live in Europe, so of course data privacy laws are a little bit better. Or worse. I know I've never had that. What happens is I'll go to the checkout and they'll say, have you got the card? And I'll say no. And sometimes they'll say, oh, take the receipt and you can kind of fill it in online. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then it's like, yeah, right.
I'm the same.
But, yeah.
Another question. Alistair Cook is a reactive captain. This is, again, market research related, of course. He had a fantastic record until the most recent series. Should he be replaced, and who should be groomed as his successor? Who is Alistair Cook
This is a cricket question. Alistair Cook is the captain of the England cricket team. And he did well for them. After seeing this question on Facebook, I researched this answer. He did well for them, and then he led them on one of their worst defeats ever against Australia, which is a series which is very important to win. Oddly enough, actually, I was having a cricket conversation not about Alistair Cook, but about Kevin Peterson, who is a notorious English cricketer who just got sacked for forever by the English Cricket Board. And they were like, right, you can't play for England, we're dropping you from the England team, you can't play for England again. And it wasn't out of anything he'd particularly done, but it was to do with sponsors and branding, and how the sponsors of the England cricket team are kind of quite straight-laced, whereas there are also sponsors of individual sportsmen who go for the ones who research as kind of being a little bit of bad boys. And you're increasingly getting these clashes between people with large individual sponsorship contracts who have an incentive basically to be a bit controversial, and the kind of team as a whole who have an incentive not to be controversial. And this is something that Twitter has done, because of course before Twitter, sportsmen didn't have a platform to be regularly controversial. They had to kind of be thrown out of nightclubs or whatever in order to cheat on their wives or
do a Bieber
or something. And yeah, and now they can kind of say something a bit racy every day, any day on Twitter they like, and the sponsors who like it, and the sponsors who hate it. So it's an interesting thing of branding and this kind of battleground that's playing out on social media.
All right, another question. Your Twitter user photo isn't your face, so explain the whole sock puppet thing.
It's my hand under a sock puppet that I made for my son, who was then 1, and it was just the kind of creature to entertain him. And I didn't, at the time I joined Twitter, it seemed to me that a lot of people had their face on Twitter as an ID, and I noticed that when I scrolled down, it just was face, 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 face. And I think there was probably a sense of, okay, I want something that will stand out. And And it's now just what I use everywhere, except on Facebook where they wouldn't allow me to. So I now have a set of Dungeons and Dragons dice to represent me on Facebook.
Much better.
Don't, you know.
So what's your take on the user photos, user names? I personally have noticed that a lot of what I see during the regular 9 to 5 hours, it's business logos, business names talking to each other. Do you think either way that it should be the brands and logos, or should it be people and faces that we see?
I mean, obviously, I tweet from the Brain Juicer account, which is just the Brain Juicer logo, and it's still me tweeting. And I prefer things to be. I don't mind. I actually don't mind what they use, what people use as a logo, or whatever. I like the tone of voice to be kind of sort of distinctive and believable and kind of non-corporate. Not kind of like, hey, let's be wacky, but sort of if it's, you know, I just want anyone I'm following on Twitter, I kind of want them to be interesting. That's the minimum requirement. I don't necessarily think I fill it all the time, but in terms of the sort of personal thing, I think I don't know that, like, you know, knowing what people look like. I come from an era of the internet where knowing what people look like wasn't necessarily a big bonus, and nowadays it's kind of like the online and offline thing is so blurred that you know, why wouldn't you? It's just assumed that you'll kind of put up selfies and such like. I think it's, you know, it's all these kind of like 30-somethings and 40-somethings complaining about millennials or whatever for being narcissists because they take selfies all the time, and all their icons are a head and shoulders face shot.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Just like mine, with the face just slightly cut off so that it looks kind of artistic.
Yeah, well, you've got a cartoon now, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I just changed it again. So let me ask one last question. Is market research as innovative as we like to think it is?
There's an interesting... Tom Anderson had an interesting point of view on this. It's quite a controversial point of view, I guess, where he was like, no, you know, if market research was innovative, then we'd all have patents, and we, you know, it would be like, his definition of innovation was very much in terms of like technology. Market research, I don't necessarily think market research does like to think of itself as innovative. I think there's innovative elements within market research. They tend to be on the kind of on the level of ideas, as well as on the level of technology and things. I mean, I think there are there's sort of innovations in technology, but they're not. I think Tom's position is right, which is if you've got something really great technologically, then you would patent it and you would kind of, you know, like deploy it as and when it was ready, and you would do very well with it. Whereas there's a lot of kind of talk about disruption and then kind of, you know, I don't know how much actual innovation there is underneath that. I think there are innovative ideas that get done, and innovative approaches, and I think that you can be a relatively innovative researcher just by bringing ideas in from outside and by kind of paying more attention to the outside world, just in a kind of different way from other people. Perhaps more in qual than in quant.
Wonderful. So it looks like we have reached the end of our time. Is there anything you would like to share as final words, Tom?
No. I mean, it's been enormously fun. Thank you. I hope whether you are listening right now or listening on the recording, I hope you've enjoyed it. And yes, it's been a pleasure. Best of luck with the next one in the series.
Thank you so much, Tom. Folks, if you have further questions for Tom, do feel free to reach out to him. Email, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. He is everywhere. The video will be available online soon, and we will send everyone the link to that. So here is wishing each one of you top-notch response rates. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.